The grandmother's voice was low and gentle, like a slow tide brushing the shore. Outside the window, the night leaned quietly against the house, and inside, two little girls lay close together beneath a quilt that smelled faintly of lavender and warmth. "Listen carefully," the grandmother whispered, her fingers tracing invisible circles in the air. "This is not just a story. This is something the ocean remembers." Long before this night, long before these walls and this bed, there was a sea so wide and blue that even the sky felt small above it. Beneath those waters lived mermaids who sang to the currents and spoke in the language of light and motion. Among them was a gentle mermaid mother named Marisol, whose heart was as vast as the ocean itself. And then there was her child. Her little daughter was called Narina. Narina was very small, smaller than the dolphins and slower than the clever fish, but she carried more curiosity than the entire sea combined. Her tail shimmered like morning sunlight on water, and her laughter traveled farther than her voice ever could. Wherever she swam, bubbles followed, as if even the ocean wanted to play with her. Marisol loved her daughter more than the coral cities, more than the glowing pearls, more than the songs of the whales. Every morning she reminded Narina to stay close. "The surface is beautiful, but it is not made for little ones. Promise me you won't go too high." And Narina would nod, her hair floating around her face like a soft halo. "I promise, Mama." But promises made by children are like sand castles. They are real until the tide comes. One calm morning, when the sea was clear and the light danced gently through the water, Narina noticed a group of tiny fish darting past her fins. Their scales shimmered with colors she had never seen before. Without thinking, she followed them, laughing silently as they weaved through coral arches and over smooth stone paths. Upward they swam, higher than Narina had ever gone. The water grew warmer, brighter. The sound of the sea changed, becoming softer, more distant. By the time the fish vanished into the blue, Narina was alone. Above her, something dark and solid blocked the sky. An island. It rose from the sea like a sleeping creature, wrapped in white sand and crowned with palm trees that swayed lazily in the breeze. Waves nudged Narina closer, gentle but insistent, until she felt the sand beneath her hands. She laughed as she rolled onto the shore, her tail sparkling in the sunlight. The air felt strange on her skin, but exciting. Everything smelled new: flowers, salt, warmth. Narina clapped her hands, delighted by their kindness, by the sound of human voices, by the warmth of belonging somewhere new. And far below, deep in the ocean's surface, Marisol felt a sudden silence. Her daughter's presence, always like a soft glow in her chest, flickered and disappeared. Marisol froze. "Narina," she called, her voice trembling through the water. No answer. Fear rushed through her faster than any current. She searched the coral gardens, the sleeping caves, the kelp forests where Narina liked to hide. She called again and again, her voice cracking, her heart pounding. "My little one, where are you?" The sea seemed to hold its breath. Above the waves, unaware of the storm of fear below, a small yacht glided into the island's bay. A family had come for a simple picnic. The parents laughed as they anchored the boat, and their young daughter ran ahead, barefoot on the sand, chasing seashells and dreams. Then she stopped. Near the palm trees, something shimmered. "Mom? Dad?" she whispered. The family approached slowly, and there, resting in the shade, was the smallest, most beautiful mermaid child they had ever imagined. Narina looked up at them with wide, curious eyes and smiled. No one screamed, no one ran. Instead, joy bloomed. They wrapped Narina in soft towels, shaded her from the sun, and offered her fruit and water. Narina laughed, enchanted by their kindness, by the sound of human voices, by the warmth of belonging somewhere new. And hours passed like moments. Games were played, smiles were exchanged. Narina, for the first time in her short life, forgot the sea entirely. And beneath the ocean surface, Marisol searched without rest. Her love rippled through the water like a storm of light. She questioned the turtles, begged the currents, sang to the moon above the waves. "I will find you," she whispered, tears dissolving into salt, "no matter where the tide had taken you." The grandmother's voice softened further, wrapping the girls in sound like a blanket. "Oh, so, my little ones," she murmured. "While a child found joy on an island, a mother searched the world for her heart." The room grew quieter. The sea waited. The grandmother leaned back slightly, her voice becoming even softer, as if she did not want to wake the sea itself. "Now listen," she whispered, "because this is where joy and worry begin to dance together." On the island, the sun climbed higher, warming the sand and turning the water into a field of glittering light. Narina sat between the palm trees, her tail hidden beneath towels, her bright eyes following every movement of the family who had found her. The little human girl brought her seashells, placing them carefully in Narina's hands, as if offering treasures. Narina laughed, the sound light and musical, and tried to imitate the girl's smile. Though they did not share words, understanding flowed easily between them. The parents watched with wonder. They spoke softly, afraid that loud voices might shatter the magic of the moment. They brought fruit, cool water, and soft cloth to protect Narina's skin from the sun. The mermaid child clapped her hands in delight at the taste of sweetness, juice dripping down her fingers as she laughed again. For the first time in her short life, Narina felt something new: belonging. She felt safe, she felt adored, she felt seen. The ocean shimmered nearby, but it felt distant now, like a dream she had already begun to forget. The sound of waves became a lullaby instead of a call. As the day drifted on, the family spread blankets and shared stories beneath the palms. They showed Narina simple games, drawing shapes in the sand, pointing at birds and clouds. She copied them clumsily, her movements half sea, half land, and they laughed together in gentle harmony. Narina forgot her promise. She forgot the coral cities. She forgot the glowing caves. She forgot her mother's voice. Deep beneath the surface, Marisol searched with growing desperation. She swam farther than she ever had before, past the familiar reefs, beyond the places where light usually rested. Her heart felt heavy, as if each beat pushed against stone. Every shadow frightened her, every silence screamed. "Narina," she sang again, her voice breaking into the currents. "My little light, answer me." The sea offered no reply.
Even the ancient turtles shook their heads. The dolphins circled her with worried eyes. The moon above watched silently as Marisol rose closer to the surface than she ever dared before. Her tears shimmered as they dissolved into salt. Above the waves, the island basked in happiness. The family took pictures they would never forget, though none of them could fully explain what they were capturing. They shared laughter, stories, and a sense of wonder that made time feel unreal. It was no longer just a picnic, it was something else entirely, something sacred. Narina sat quietly for a moment, watching the water sparkle at the shore. A faint ache stirred in her chest, like a distant echo. Something tugged gently at her heart, but she did not understand it. She shook her head, smiling again as the little girl pulled her hand toward another game. The ocean waited. Below, Marisol felt a pull, a whisper in her blood, a direction. Hope flickered. The grandmother's voice slowed, each word stretching like a soft yawn. "And so," she murmured, while a child laughed beneath the sun, the sea itself began to guide a mother home. The room grew still. The night breathed quietly.
The grandmother smiled softly, as if she could see the island herself. "The sea has many moods," she said quietly, "but joy can be just as deep as sorrow." The sun drifted slowly across the sky, and the island glowed with a lazy golden warmth. Narina had never known a day like this. Time did not feel like the steady rhythm of tides anymore. It felt loose and playful, stretching and bending with every laugh. The family moved gently around her, careful, curious, and full of wonder. They spoke to her as if she understood every word, and in some quiet way she did, not through language, but through kindness, through tone, through smiles that needed no translation. The little human girl sat beside Narina, showing her how to stack smooth stones into tiny towers. Narina tried to copy her, her fingers clumsy on land, and when the stones fell, both girls laughed together. The sound carried across the sand, light and bright, mixing with the whisper of palm leaves above. The parents watched with hearts full. They had come to the island expecting nothing more than sunshine and sandwiches. Instead, they felt as though they had stepped into a living fairy tale. Every glance at the small mermaid child filled them with awe and a strange tenderness they could not explain. They brought Narina shade when the sun grew stronger. They dipped towels in cool water and placed them gently over her shoulders. She sighed contentedly, closing her eyes for a moment, feeling safe in a way she had never felt outside the sea. For a brief instant, a memory brushed against her mind. A voice, soft, loving. Narina. She opened her eyes and looked toward the ocean. The water shimmered invitingly, but the feeling slipped away like a dream upon waking. The little human girl tugged her hand again, pointing excitedly at a bird soaring overhead, and Narina smiled, letting the moment pass. Far below the surface, Marisol followed the faintest trace of hope. She swam toward waters that felt unfamiliar, guided not by sight, but by instinct. Every pulse of her heart pointed her in the same direction. She surfaced just enough to feel the warmth of sunlight on her face, her eyes scanning the horizon. An island. Her breath caught. She had never been there before, but something deep within her stirred. The ocean around the island felt different, touched by emotion, by laughter, by something fragile and precious. "My child," Marisol whispered, her voice trembling with fear and longing. Back on the sand, the family prepared their picnic meal. They laid out food and shared small bites with Marina, laughing at her delighted reactions. She tasted sweetness and softness, flavors the sea had never offered her before. She clapped her hands, splashing sand, her tail flicking slightly beneath the towels. Joy wrapped around her like sunlight. As the afternoon wore on, the little human girl rested her head gently against Marina's shoulder. Marina froze at first, surprised by the closeness, then relaxed, a warmth spreading through her chest. She felt something new again. Connection. The sea, once her whole world, felt far away now. Not forgotten, but quiet, like a song paused in the middle. But beneath the waves, the song grew louder. Marisol circled the island cautiously, her heart racing. She could feel her daughter now, faint but unmistakable. The pull was stronger with every moment. Tears streamed down her cheeks as relief mixed with fear. She was close. The ocean itself seemed to hush, as if holding space for what was coming. As the sun began its slow descent, the light softened, painting the island in gentle gold and amber tones. Shadows grew longer, the breeze cooled. The family felt a subtle shift in the air, though they could not explain it. Something was changing. Marina felt it too. That ache returned, stronger now, pressing against her heart. She looked at the water again, her smile fading slightly. The waves seemed to call her, not loudly, but patiently. The grandmother's voice slowed, lowering into a tender hush. And that, she whispered, is how joy prepares the heart for what it must eventually let go. The night outside the window grew deeper. The sea waited. The grandmother drew a slow breath, as if the ocean itself had entered the room. Sometimes, she said softly, the heart remembers before the mind does. On the island, the afternoon light began to mellow, turning from bright gold to a softer, honeyed glow. The air cooled just enough to make the palm leaves sigh. Narina sat quietly now, no longer darting with laughter, her bright eyes fixed on the water that stretched endlessly before her. The ocean shimmered, calm and patient. She could feel it, a gentle pull, like a hand resting against her chest. Not urgent, not friendly, just present. The sea was not calling her away, it was reminding her of itself. The little human girl noticed the change. She sat beside Marina, swinging her legs gently, watching the waves too. Without words, she placed a small seashell into Narina's palm,
warm from the sun. Narina closed her fingers around it. Something stirred deep inside her. A memory surfaced, soft and hazy. A voice singing to the currents, arms wrapping around her when the water felt too cold. A promise whispered every morning, stay close. Her smile trembled just slightly. The parents sensed the shift as well. They moved more quietly now, speaking slowly, as if they were guests inside a moment that deserved respect. None of them knew why their hearts felt heavier all of a sudden, only that the magic around them was changing shape. Out at sea, the ocean darkened subtly as Marisol approached the island's edge. She remained hidden beneath the surface, her heart pounding so loudly she feared it would give her away. Through the rippling water, she saw movement on the shore, a small shape. Her breath caught. Narina! Marisol pressed her hand to her mouth, tears streaming freely now. Relief surged through her so powerfully it nearly weakened her fins. Her child was alive, safe, smiling, and not alone. Marisol watched quietly, her heart torn between gratitude and longing. She saw how gently the humans treated her daughter. She saw the laughter, the kindness, the warmth. For a moment she understood why Marina had stayed, but understanding did not quiet the ache. My little one, she whispered. Mama is here. On the shore, Narina felt a sudden warmth rush through her chest, stronger than before, clearer. She stood slowly, the towels slipping slightly, her gaze locked on the water. The waves rolled in gently, brushing the sand at her fingertips. She knelt. The family watched, unsure why their throats felt tight. The little girl clutched her mother's hand, her eyes wide, her smile fading into something softer, something sadder. Narina lifted the seashell and pressed it to her chest. Then she looked back at them. Her eyes shimmered with emotion too large for her small body to contain. She reached out, touching each of their hands in turn, her fingers lingering, memorizing the warmth. Thank you. The word was not spoken, but it filled the air all the same. The ocean stirred. Marisol rose just enough for her face to break the surface. She did not rush. She did not call out. She waited, trusting the bond that had never truly broken. When Narina saw her mother, time seemed to stop. The world narrowed to that single moment. Mama, she breathed. The sound was barely audible, but it carried across the water like a prayer. Marisol swam closer, tears shining in her eyes, her arms opening wide. The ocean itself seemed to lean inward, holding space for their reunion. Narina hesitated only once. She looked back at the family, at the girl who had played with her, at the parents who had protected her. Her lips curved a small, grateful smile, even as tears spilled freely. She raised one hand in a gentle wave. The family waved back, hearts breaking and swelling all at once. Then Narina turned toward the sea. As Marisol gathered her child into her arms, the water glowed faintly around them as if blessing the moment. Narina buried her face against her mother's shoulder, sobbing softly, the sound dissolving into the waves. Marisol held her tightly, whispering comfort, whispering love, whispering that she was safe. On the shore, the family stood in silence, tears on their cheeks, knowing they had witnessed something rare and sacred. The grandmother's voice lowered to a tender hush. "And so," she said, "the sea took back its child, but left behind a memory that would never fade." The room grew quiet. The night listened.
The grandmother folded her hands in her lap, her voice lowering as though it might drift away if spoken too loudly. "There is no place," she said softly, "safer than a mother's arms." Beneath the surface of the sea, Marisol held Narina close, her arms wrapped tightly around the small, trembling body of her child. The water around them glowed faintly, stirred by emotion older than the ocean itself. Narina clung to her mother, her tears dissolving into salt, her sobs quiet but deep. "I thought I lost you," Marisol whispered, her voice breaking into soft currents. "I searched every corner of the sea." Narina pressed her face against her mother's shoulder, breathing in the familiar comfort she had not realized she missed so deeply. The rhythm of Marisol's heart steadied her own, each beat a promise of safety. "I was happy," Narina murmured softly, "but I forgot how it feels to be home." Marisol kissed her hair gently, brushing strands away from her face. "Happiness can visit many places, but home is where love never leaves." They remained there for a long moment, floating together as the sea calmed around them. The current slowed, the tension dissolved. Even the distant creatures of the deep seemed to settle, as though the ocean itself had exhaled in relief. Above the waves, the island grew quiet. The family stood at the shoreline, watching the water shimmer and settle. They did not see the embrace beneath the surface, but they felt its meaning. A sense of peace washed over them, gentle and bittersweet. The little girl hugged herself, her eyes still fixed on the sea. "She went home," she whispered. Her parents nodded, holding her close. They did not feel sadness so much as gratitude. They had been part of something rare, something beautiful. Underwater, Marisol guided Narina slowly away from the shore, careful not to rush her. Narina glanced back once, her heart tugging gently as she saw the island grow smaller. She lifted her hand and waved through the water. The ocean carried the gesture upward, a soft shimmer at the surface, as if answering for her. As they swam deeper, the light changed. Sunbeams softened into gentle ribbons, wrapping around them like silk. Narina felt her body relax fully now, her tail moving easily again, her breath sinking with the sea. The coral cities appeared in the distance, glowing faintly, welcoming them home. Creatures emerged from their hiding places, sensing the return of something precious. Fish swirled in quiet celebration. turtles nodded slowly as they passed. Marisol's heart, once heavy with fear, now felt light again. "You were brave," she told Narina softly, "and curious. Those are good things. But remember this feeling. Remember where you belong." Narina nodded, her eyes half closed, exhaustion settling in now that the fear had passed. She nestled closer, her small body heavy with sleep. Above them, the island faded into memory, but its magic did not disappear. On the shore, the family packed their picnic in silence, each movement thoughtful. They did not laugh loudly anymore. They spoke softly, as if the island deserved respect. When they returned to their yacht, they took one last look at the calm water. "This was the best picnic," the father said quietly. The mother nodded. "We'll remember this forever." The little girl held the seashell tightly in her hand, smiling through her tears. Back beneath the waves, Marisol tucked Narina into a quiet coral alcove, wrapping her in soft seaweed blankets that glowed faintly. Narina yawned, her eyes fluttering closed. "Mama?" she whispered. "Yes, my little one. Will I ever see them again?" Marisol smiled gently. "Some meetings are meant to happen only once, but they stay with us always." Narina drifted into sleep, comforted by the sound of her mother's heart and the gentle song of the sea. The grandmother's voice slowed, wrapping the room in calm. "And so," she whispered, "love returned to where it began, and peace followed close behind." The night settled deeper. The ocean rested. The grandmother smiled softly, her eyes half closed as if she too could see the ocean in her mind. "Even when a story seems finished," she whispered, "the heart often keeps listening." That night, the island did not sleep. Moonlight spilled across the sand, silver and quiet, touching every shell and stone. The waves moved slowly now, as if they were thinking. Somewhere beneath them, Narina slept, curled close to her mother, wrapped in glowing seaweed, dreaming gentle dreams. But dreams, like tides, have a way of traveling. In her sleep, Narina saw the island again. She saw the laughing family, the picnic cloth fluttering in the breeze, the little girl with kind eyes and curious hands. The memory did not hurt. It glowed softly, like a pearl held close to the heart. Far above, on the yacht anchored not far from shore, the family lay awake longer than usual. The little girl could not sleep. She sat near the window, holding the seashell in her palm. When she closed her eyes, she heard the ocean breathing. When she opened them, she thought she saw light moving beneath the water. "Mom," she whispered, careful not to wake anyone, "do you think she's okay?" Her mother stirred, pulling the blanket closer. "Yes," she murmured gently, "she's with her mother now." The girl smiled and rested her head against the window, watching the moonlit waves until sleep finally came. Back beneath the sea, Marisol awoke suddenly. She sensed it before she saw it. A soft glow pulsed through the water, spreading outward from Narina's sleeping form. Tiny lights drifted upward, like stars rising instead of falling. The sea responded,
humming quietly, ancient and knowing. Marisol knelt beside her child, brushing a hand along her hair. "She remembers," Marisol whispered. Narina shifted in her sleep, her lips curving into a small smile. The glow grew stronger, not dangerous, but full of feeling. Memories were waking, joy, laughter, kindness. The ocean carried them gently, sending faint ripples toward the surface. On the island, the waves shimmered. A breeze stirred the palm trees, even though the night had been still. The sand sparkled faintly, as if remembering footsteps that had already faded. At dawn, the family prepared to leave. They moved slowly, as though leaving too quickly might break something invisible. The father checked the yacht, the mother packed their bags, and the little girl walked down to the shore one last time. She knelt and placed the seashell gently on the sand. "For you," she whispered, "so you remember me too." The shell caught the morning light, glowing briefly before a wave rolled in and carried it away. Beneath the surface, Narina stirred awake. She felt it immediately. Something familiar, something kind. She slipped from her coral bed and swam upward, her mother watching quietly, but without fear this time. Marisol followed at a distance, trusting the sea and trusting her child. Narina reached the shallow waters near the shore just as the yacht began to move. She did not rise fully this time. Instead, she placed her small hands against the underside of the surface, her eyes shining as she watched the family wave goodbye to the island. The little girl paused. For just a moment, she felt it too, a warmth in her chest, a sense of being seen. She waved one last time, smiling through tears she didn't fully understand. The sea answered with a gentle swell, lifting the yacht slightly, rocking it like a cradle. Then the moment passed. Narina swam back down, her heart light but full. Marisol met her halfway, wrapping her daughter in a calm, knowing embrace. "You did well," Marisol said softly. "I didn't forget. I just learned something new." They returned to the coral city together, where life continued in its slow, beautiful rhythm. Narina played again, laughed again, learned again, but something in her had changed. She listened more deeply now. She felt more gently. And sometimes, when the sea was very calm, she would swim close to the surface and hum softly, sending kindness upward on the waves. The grandmother's voice lowered further, wrapping the room in warmth. "And that island," she said, "would always feel a little more magical, though no one would ever know exactly why." She reached out and brushed her granddaughter's hair back gently. "Because some stories," she whispered, "do not end when we say goodbye." The night grew still. Breathing slowed. Dreams opened their doors.
The grandmother shifted slightly, the room quiet enough to hear the soft rhythm of breathing around her, as if everyone had already begun to dream, even while awake. "Sometimes," she whispered, "love leaves a trail behind it, even after it has gone." Beneath the ocean's surface, Narina grew in small, gentle ways. Not taller, not stronger, but softer inside. The sea seemed to notice. It carried her more carefully now, rocking her as it had when she was very small. She learned to swim with slower strokes, to listen to the currents instead of racing them. At night, she often rested near the upper waters, gazing at the pale shimmer of moonlight filtering down. She no longer felt the urge to rise above the waves. Instead, she felt content simply knowing the world above was there, breathing alongside her own. Marisol watched her with quiet pride. One evening, as the ocean darkened into deep velvet blues, a strange calm settled over the water. Fish drifted instead of darted. Even the distant songs of whales softened, as if the sea itself were listening. Narina felt it first. A warmth passed through the water, familiar and gentle, like a memory brushing her cheek. She closed her eyes and hummed softly, the sound barely more than a breath. The hum traveled outward, weaving through coral and stone, rising toward the surface. Far away on another shore, a family sat by a small fire. The little girl from the island was there, older now by a season, her legs folded beneath her as she stared into the flames. She held nothing in her hands this time, yet she felt full. "Do you remember the island?" she asked quietly. Her parents smiled, exchanging a glance. "We do," her mother said. "It felt different." The girl nodded, pressing her palm to her chest. "I think someone there still thinks about us." The fire crackled gently, sending sparks into the night sky. The ocean beyond reflected the stars, calm and patient. Back beneath the waves, Narina opened her eyes. She felt no sadness, only connection. Marisol swam closer, resting her hand on Narina's shoulder. "You're learning the old magic," she whispered, "the kind that doesn't glow or sparkle but lasts." Narina leaned into her mother's touch. "It feels like a string," she said softly. "A kind one." Marisol smiled. "That's because it's made of love." The ocean accepted the feeling, folding it into itself. The connection did not pull or ache. It simply existed, like a quiet promise. Days passed. Seasons shifted subtly. The island changed its shape as waves smoothed its edges, yet it held its memory. Travelers who passed near it often felt unusually calm. Some stayed longer than planned. Others slept more deeply there than anywhere else. No one knew why. Narina grew curious again, but this time her curiosity stayed gentle. She explored nearby reefs, listened to the stories of turtles older than the coral, and learned the language of tides. She learned when to move and when to rest. At night, she dreamed of warm kitchens, soft laughter, and hands that offered kindness without needing to keep it. The grandmother's voice slowed further, wrapping the words in comfort. "And so," she murmured, "the sea learned something new too." She paused, letting silence stretch like a soft blanket. That love does not always mean holding on. Sometimes it means letting the waves carry the memory gently so it never sinks. Narina curled beside her mother as the ocean dimmed into sleep. The surface above was calm, the stars steady, the world resting in balance. And somewhere far above, a child dreamed of water and light, smiling without knowing why. The night deepened. Breathing slowed. The story continued, quietly, inside every heart that listened. Dreams drifted closer. The grandmother took a slow breath, as if she were listening to the sea between her own heartbeats. Every journey, she whispered, leaves behind a quiet echo. Deep beneath the moonlit ocean, Narina drifted through her days with a new kind of stillness. The excitement of discovery had softened into something calmer, something wiser. She no longer swam just to see what lay ahead, but to feel where the water wished to carry her. The coral city glowed gently around her, alive with quiet motion. Sea plants swayed like breathing lungs, and tiny lights flickered within shells tucked into the rocks. Narina brushed her fingers along the coral walls as she passed, greeting them as old friends. Marisol watched from a distance, allowing her child the freedom to move at her own pace. A mother's worry no longer weighed on her heart. Trust had taken its place. One afternoon, when the sea shimmered with soft turquoise light, Narina felt a subtle change in the current. It was not strong, not urgent, just a suggestion, a gentle invitation. She followed it. The water grew warmer, brighter as she swam upward toward a quiet reef near the surface. There she found something unexpected. A small boat drifted lazily nearby, tied to a rock, rocking gently with the waves. No voices echoed across the water, no laughter, only calm. Narina remained hidden beneath the surface, peeking through ribbons of sunlight. She felt no fear, only curiosity. On the boat, an elderly woman sat wrapped in a shawl, her feet dangling close to the water. Her eyes were closed, her breathing slow and even, as though she were listening to something only she could hear. Narina hummed softly. The sound rose through the water like a sigh. The woman opened her eyes. She did not gasp, she did not move suddenly, she only smiled, as though greeting a long-remembered dream. "So," she whispered to the sea, "you are real after all." Narina's heart fluttered. She did not rise fully. Instead, she let her glow brighten just enough to be seen through the water. The woman placed a hand over her chest. "You don't need to come closer," she said gently. "I only needed to know you were safe." The sea seemed to pause. Narina felt warmth spread through her, deeper than joy. This was not the excitement of being discovered. This was recognition, understanding. Marisol appeared quietly beside her, her presence calm and steady. She studied the woman carefully, sensing no harm, only kindness and age-softened wonder. The woman nodded slowly, as if she could feel Marisol there too. "You're doing well, both of you." The moment lingered, fragile and perfect. Then the current shifted again, gently this time, urging Narina back. She gave one last soft hum, a sound filled with gratitude, before swimming away with her mother. The woman closed her eyes once more, tears slipping quietly down her cheeks. She would never tell anyone what she had seen. Some truths were meant only for the heart. That night, Narina slept deeply. Her dreams were filled with faces she did not know, but somehow understood. Faces of people who listened, who waited, who believed in magic even when it whispered instead of shouted. Marisol watched her sleep, stroking her hair slowly. "You are becoming part of many stories," she whispered. Narina shifted, smiling faintly in her dreams. Above the sea, the stars blinked gently, reflected in calm water. Somewhere far away, the grandmother's voice softened even more. "And so," she whispered, "the little mermaid magic does not belong only to the sea." She paused, letting the silence stretch. "Sometimes," she said, "it visits those who sit quietly enough to notice." The room grew warmer, breathing slowed, the ocean rested, holding its secrets kindly, and sleep, gentle and deep, drifted closer still. The grandmother's voice became slower still, like waves reaching the shore after a long journey. "Every story," she whispered, "knows when it is time to become quiet." The sea entered a season of deep calm. The currents moved gently now, as if they no longer needed to hurry anywhere. Light filtered through the water in long, slow ribbons, painting the coral city in soft blues and pale gold. Nerina swam through it all with ease, her movements unhurried, her heart steady. She had grown, not in size, but in presence. Creatures of the sea noticed her differently now. Small fish followed her without fear. Even shy ones lingered near when she passed, sensing something peaceful in her wake. Nerina greeted them all with the same gentle smile, her hum low and comforting. Marisol watched with quiet amazement. "She carries the calm now," Marisol whispered to the sea. "It carries her too." One evening, as the ocean prepared for rest, Nerina felt something familiar again. Not a call, not a pull, just a warmth spreading slowly through the water like a memory waking up. She followed it instinctively. Above the surface, on a distant shore, the family from the island sat together once more. Life had moved on as life always does, but this evening felt different. The sky glowed softly, and the air was still. The little girl, now older, leaned against her mother's shoulder. "Do you think she is happy?" she asked quietly. Her mother smiled, brushing her hair. "I think she is," she said. "I think she's exactly where she belongs." The girl closed her eyes. At that same moment, Nerina reached the upper waters. She did not rise, she did not reveal herself, she only listened. The sea carried the family's laughter downward, softened and distant. Nerina felt it wrap around her like a familiar blanket. She placed a hand over her heart, humming once, softly, a sound filled with gratitude. Marisol joined her, resting beside her daughter. They floated together, mother and child, sharing the quiet understanding that nothing had been lost, only transformed. The warmth faded gently, leaving peace behind. Nerina swam back toward the coral city, her energy calm, her thoughts slow. She curled beside her mother as the ocean darkened, the world preparing for sleep. The sea accepted them, holding them carefully. Above, the stars reflected on the water like scattered dreams. The grandmother leaned closer, her voice barely above a breath. "And so," she whispered, "the little mermaid learned the final magic." She paused. "That love does not disappear when stories end. It simply becomes part of the quiet." She brushed her granddaughter's hair gently, the motion slow and steady. "Now," she murmured, "close your eyes." The room was still. Breathing softened. The ocean slept.
And the story, having said all it needed to say, rested too. The grandmother's voice softened into its quietest rhythm, as though she were speaking only to the night itself. And now, she whispered, the sea is ready to rest. The ocean lay calm beneath the stars, its surface smooth and unbroken, breathing slowly in and out. Beneath it, the coral city dimmed its glow, lights fading one by one, like lanterns being gently lowered at the end of a long evening. Narina rested beside her mother, curled comfortably, her small body rising and falling with the rhythm of the water. She felt no need to dream tonight. Everything she needed was already here. Marisol watched her child sleep, her heart full and quiet. The fear she once carried felt like a distant tide, long receded. In its place was trust, trust in the sea, trust in the paths love chooses. She brushed Narina's hair softly, humming a melody older than memory. The ocean recognized it immediately, wrapping the sound in warmth and carrying it gently through the reefs and stones. Far above, the island slept peacefully. The sand was smooth again, the footprints long gone, yet something lingered, a softness in the air, a calm that stayed even after waves passed. Travelers who came later would feel it without knowing why. They would sleep more deeply there, laugh more quietly, leave with lighter hearts. On distant shores, the family slept too. The little girl dreamed of blue light and gentle songs, of water that smiled back at her. She did not wake remembering details, only a feeling that stayed with her all her life, a belief in kindness, a trust in quiet magic. Back beneath the sea, Narina stirred slightly and opened her eyes. She looked around, taking in the familiar glow, the slow movement of the water, her mother's steady presence. She felt complete. "Mama," she whispered, barely moving her lips. "Yes, my little one. Will the sea always remember us?" Marisol smiled, pressing her forehead gently to her daughter. "The sea remembers everything that loves it," she whispered, "and it never forgets how to love back." Narina closed her eyes again, content. The ocean seemed to sigh, settling deeper into rest. Fish tucked themselves into coral beds. Currents slowed until they were barely moving at all. Even the distant whales grew quiet, their songs fading into silence. The grandmother leaned back slightly, her story complete. "And so," she murmured, "the little mermaid who once wandered learned where she belonged." She paused, letting the words dissolve gently. "Not because she stayed," she continued softly, "but because she loved." The room grew warmer. Breathing slowed further. The night wrapped itself around every listener like a blanket pulled up just right. "And that," the grandmother whispered, "is how the sea sings us to sleep." Silence followed, not an empty silence, but a peaceful one, where stories rest and dreams begin.